Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the largest, fastest growing, and the most active uh, meetup. It's a global community of large-scale Scrum organizational design and product-centric development, and also encapsulates things like business agility and artificial intelligence, and many other great things under the same umbrella of large scale Scrum. Today we have a special guest. Um, I'm going to introduce him very quickly and pass the baton over to him. His name is Michael Voorhaen, and he is the recent presenter at the Global Last conference that took place in Amsterdam this year in 2025. And his presentation there was so galvanizing and so interesting and so full of nuances that it felt like the rest of the global community that could not make it to Amsterdam should really listen to him speak. So I kindly invited Michael to join one of our meetups. So Michael is a product manager at ProTimes, the company that he coaches for. He's responsible for ProTime planning solution and the product Strobbo. And as you can see on the screen, that's the Strobbo experiment discussion that he will be covering today. Michael works with multiple cross-functional teams in a less inspired setup, and he will probably explain to us what inspired setup is, what a less inspired setup is. Um, his teams use a single shared backlog and align around common goals to maximize learning and impact across multiple teams in a team of teams structure. Michael has a PhD in computer science from the University of Antwerp, and he has some other designations and credentials that are very unique and making him a very qualified speaker. So without any further ado, Michael, if you allow me, I'll pass this over to you. Please take it away and share with us your expertise.
Thanks, G. Let's get started, right? Well, let's just dive into the slides. I think, I can go very quickly about this one. I think Gene already mentioned some stuff. I have a I have a PhD, so I have a background as a software scientist. Long time ago, I was busy with wireless networks and things like that. I from there rolled on into development. I tried to make a list once of all the different technologies that I work with. It became too big, but I'm still passionate about it. I'm just not actively developing anymore. These days, I'm really busy with I think three things: product development, which led me to be very busy with agile as well, because I believe in agile as a process to do product development. And then in the last couple of years, very actively busy with org design, like really understanding how do we need to tweak our organizational structure, how do we need to set up the teams to get the right flow of work done and be as efficient as we are effective as we can be actually. Like Gene said, I'm in a product manager role right now. Most of the story that I will tell is actually when I was the product owner of Strobbo, which is one smaller product of ProTime. I can tell you a lot about the rest, but that's maybe not for this presentation. But if you want to hear more, you can always contact me about that. Just a quick word about Strobbo. We're a tool which is mostly sold in Belgium. So you probably, I think most of you are not from Belgium, so you probably won't have heard about it. We do planning for employees in the context of flexible workers. So people who next to their day job do additional jobs as well. That's the main use case that we have. Of course, you can plan your own normal workforce with our tool, but we do a lot of work around that flexible stuff. And the main reason for that is the difficult word at the bottom there, automated dimona in contracts. Dimona is something that has to do with the Belgian labor legislation. So every time, for example, we have a flexible worker starting at one of our customers, and they come there for just that day, we need to do a declaration with the Social Security to tell them they are working today. Otherwise, they're not in order with Social Security, and that's very strict in Belgium. You can get very high fines if that's not in order. And everything kind of grew from there. But when the founders started with the product, it started with the planning, and then flexible work got introduced in the Belgian labor market. We were able to really quickly pick up on that automation of those demonas, which was a gap in the market, and everything started to grow from there. We added digital time registration. We at the end of the month can send all of the data to your payroll partner so people can get paid correctly, and we do reporting. That's mainly the use case of what Strobbo does. We started in 2017. I'm going to give you some background because the story is about how we started as a startup, then really rapidly grew, and then it started to break down a little bit and what we did to fix it. So it's important to know how rapidly we grew. We started selling in December 2016. I was not yet involved with the company then. Well, we won some prizes in the meanwhile, and I mean, after less than 2 years, we got acquired by ProTime because they saw the potential in the market. By then, we already had about 450 customers in Belgium, and we were rapidly growing. 2019, we were closing into the thousands or aiming for the thousands already. We were market leaders then, and I think we're still the market leader in Belgium in this kind of market. Although, I mean, honestly, that we have gotten more competition over the years, of course, because this is a very active market to be in as well. And then at some point, because we did not start as Strobbo, we started with a Dutch name, Online Werkrooster. But of course, yeah, if we wanted to go to our French-speaking part of Belgium, that turned out a little bit more difficult. And we still have international ambitions, and we knew that we had to rebrand as well. Then I think the graph ends at around 2020, where we have 1,300 customers. I think if I look up the exact number, but it will be much closer to 3,000 at the moment. So we've kept our growth over the last couple of years as well. We got acquired. I think I'm going to show you some pictures just to give you an idea of how the team grew. We have our founders, Bert and Nick. Bert left the company last year. Nick is still with ProTime as well as me. But the team started with just a few people. And when the acquisition came, this is the picture, then like 1.5 years later, you can see we more than doubled already. By the time I joined up, which is me there in the back, I think this was actually the day, the Friday before I started, because the team was doing a team building. We again more than doubled in size. This is more than the development team. This was all of Strobbo, so the developers, the sales, the consultants, etc. Everybody was there. But by the time I got there, we grew from 2 to 3 devs in the beginning, and then very fast after the acquisition, there was more than 10 people in the development team there running around, and there were a lot of junior developers there as well. A lot of people who just started from their from school immediately. They did their internship with us and then started working for us. So a very low experience level there, but everybody very motivated. But when I came, we were already busy with something that was part of the acquisition. The tool very rapidly grew in popularity, but was also just a side project that Bert and Nick made. So in terms of code quality and everything that was around it, being easy to maintain, deploy for new customers, that was not the ideal setup yet. So part of the acquisition was also a track to kind of rebuild everything from the ground up to make it more resilient, to make it more scalable, and to address some of the problems that were there. So we were building a new version next to it, and step by step trying to replace some of the modules in the V1 already, and then gearing up for a full new version of the platform. And I list that as one of the struggles that we had, because that was not an easy thing to do, because we were still adding new features while we were growing, and at the same time actually rebuilding everything from the ground up, with a team that was, of course, not very experienced in the domain that we were in. The second struggle that we had was that, and that this became very apparent very quickly when I started. The work was presented very fragmented and very detailed to the developers. So the flow typically was that Bert and Nick, the founders, kind of explained everything to the team lead, who was knowledgeable about what was going on in the tool, and that he then would start preparing issues, stories with acceptance criteria for the different developers in the team. But there was also a culture of developers really identifying as being front-end and back-end developers. So usually when we went into a sprint, the front-end developers got their items, which were basically building on back-end issues, which were picked up in the last sprint, and the back-end developers would start building the new back-end endpoints, which again led to a lot of slowdown and really getting things live. And when we really had finished something, what the team delivered really got stuck waiting, because they were waiting for feedback from our founders before getting it live. And we really wanted everything to be completed in a module, so there were no real incremental releases. So we really had a big warehouse full of stuff that we built, but almost never got into the hands of customers. The new version was still there waiting. We got it live with a couple of customers, maybe. Then troubles started popping up, bugs were there, missing features, and then it grinded to a halt. And usually, the moment that we started discovering that something was wrong, the team was actually already building the next thing. So we were really getting stuck there. So we really wanted to start fixing this. I'm going to use a couple of slides here with a tool called org topologies, which I use throughout the years. Not in the beginning, but I find it useful to kind of explain to you where we were and where we wanted to go to. But I'll explain along the way. Org topologies is a more detailed map. I'm going to use the one on the right, where on the axis and the horizontal axis, we talk about a scope of skills mandate, so what the team actually is allowed to do. And on the vertical axis is the scope of work mandate, is the type of work that teams actually can work on. The one on the left is a lot more detailed. You see that it goes from really functional, I'm a front-end developer, back-end developer, to really end-to-end and expanding, or on the scope of work where you go from tasks up until at whole product focus. We're going to focus a little bit more on the big blocks here. Where we were, and if we put that on the map, I think in a period of about 2 years, and this happened very quickly. We drifted from a startup mentality where there were just a couple of people, and I know Bert and Nick very well. We've been very close over the last couple of years. They started this because they had a job after work, also in hospitality. We were mainly active in the hospitality sector in Belgium, because there is a lot of flexible work there. So they saw the problems and they tried to fix it. They were really close to the problems and the customers that were there. And in a very short amount of time, we actually drifted to a position where, well, they were not as close to the customers anymore. They were really in a directing position. And our dev team, which was already quite big, a little bit too big to manage, was really in a situation where they were just executing on the work and they were not delivering any value anymore. And that was something that we wanted to address. That was very important for us. We knew that we needed to fix this because we were not we were grinding to a halt. Um, some years went by. We did a lot of experiments over there. I think it was really only about 3 years ago that we really started to making real change and really wanted to fix the problem. And some different things, courses that we followed, discussions that we had, led us to starting to work with Steven de Neer from Simplification Officers. They're mainly active in Belgium as well, but several other European countries too. Um, we started working with him mainly because we didn't have any money to do a big change. Part of the acquisition was okay, you need to rebuild everything, but we also couldn't go to management and ask for a big pot of money to just do a full flip, less flip, for example, and change everything. We needed to do it ourselves, so we needed to figure a way out to do it by ourselves, but not completely by ourselves. So we started with a lean improvement kata together with Steven. Um, Basically, what that amounted up to was just Steven doing a call with either me and or Bert or both of us for an hour each Friday. He let us complain for 15 to 20 minutes, and then he stopped the discussion and said like, okay, what are we now going to do to fix whatever problem you have? Um, we knew the direction that we wanted to go in. Will be in the next slide. But he was really helping us to kind of every time do an experiment that we could do with the team, smaller steps that we could take to kind of get more closer to that final vision that we had, and every time a next target direction. And of course, we wanted to get back to that, what in org topologies they call a driving archetype. We wanted our teams to work on business problems. That was very important for us. We wanted them to be close to the problem and the customers. We wanted to not well, for us, the ambition was not to be in that delivering archetype where the team could work on features and deliver them end to end. We wanted to aim a little bit higher than that. That was also driven a little bit by the motivation that we wanted to be ahead of the curve within Pro Time, and we were a small part of a bigger organization, and we actually really wanted to showcase what we were worth. So that was an ambitious goal that we set for ourselves. With the idea there that we would have multiple development teams. There was a time that we had 3 development teams. Now we're back to 2, with a product owner there, really focusing, working together with our sales and operations teams, focusing on business problems and fixing them and really focusing on that and not just being a feature factory that is building things. Why is it less inspired? We took a lot of lessons from Les, and you will see that in the next couple of slides as well. But if you look at org topology again, Les is really centered around that driving archetype. And you want to aim for teams that are cross-functional, which are working on business problems rather than just being a feature factory. That's the real ambition that you want to get there. So we went and we started really adopting some of the things, well, some of the Scrum ceremonies as well, but because Les originally started and started building on top of those ceremonies, we started implementing a lot of the events that were there and also a lot of the things that were underneath. For example, one of the first things that we did, and it for me, this is quite evident and probably for you too as well, but we started doing real sprint reviews. Um, uh, and I'm using the word elevating kata here, also a little bit terminology from org topologies, because those are the katas that move you towards the driving archetype. And we started working with Steven on, we really want to get sprint reviews where there is a lot of interaction with our stakeholders, because that was missing at that point. And we were just building, we were waiting for feedback for the founders. That was also not scalable. We really want to build stuff, get feedback from our sales consultants. We knew customers were a little bit out, not an option at that point in time, but at least as close to the customer as possible and get quick feedback. But we also knew that the team wasn't ready for that at that point in time. So we came up with a plan where we started with the team, and we went to them. We want to reinvent the sprint reviews because typically before they were very focused on what the team did in terms of items. Very quickly, we had a glance at the feature, but then typically after 10 minutes, we were already talking about how is this coded, which was not really efficient. You were not getting feedback on the items. So we took a step back, and with the team, we came up with a bazaar style format where actually the teams were then moving one to the other, and playing stakeholder with the other team. We actually asked them to role play this, to really try to put them in the position as a stakeholder and feel like how is it to look at the other people's work, and also learn to give feedback about it, work on that open culture. Um, we did that for a couple of sprints. I would never recommend that you do that like for very long months on end, because then you're not moving forward. But up until a point where it felt a little bit more natural for everybody to do that, we were all already talking to a couple of friendly stakeholders, people we knew from our business unit, who were not overly critical, were very constructive, wanted us to succeed. We started inviting them. Then we started opening it up to everybody. And now actually this is a company-wide event. Jean also mentioned it. I'm now in a position where I have two products. I have Strobbo and I have the planning product from ProTime. We do the sprint review together. That's 4 teams in all. And so it is just a big bazaar style sprint review where people can join in from the entire company, go to the teams that they want to visit and see the work that they did. And there's fun things popping up there, because I think that this for me is one of the loveliest things that I saw popping up in the last half year. And one of the teams actually made their own pizza shop, Papa Luigi's Pizza Palace. So every time they build a new feature, and even very technical features. We did something with webhooks a while back. They prepare a demo and people can go to the breakout and start using it and help Papa Luigi. And that's very inspiring for everyone. Initially, we did this on site every time, but as we grew company wide and we also have multiple locations, we switched to an online format. At the beginning, we lost a little bit of the touch with the stakeholders. There was more interaction, so we had to put a lot of effort there. Now this is also running smoothly, but you need to put more effort in the online format. Luckily, this is also something very much supported by the development teams right now. I think if I look at it, me as product owner and the new product owner, we are there, we are listening to what the stakeholders are saying, but it will happen regardless of whether we do action or not. The teams want to do the sprint review and they want to do it well and they want to show their works. They're very proud of it. Similar to what Les does with the planning 1 and 2, we are only 2 teams, but still it was very important for us that that our teams really understood what they were working on, and it's also important for us that our teams are quite interchangeable, that they have more or less the same skills. There's a small difference as some items are very much likely to be picked up by one team and others by the other team. But like 80 or 90% of the items, they can definitely be picked up by both teams. And that's also how we want it. You'll see how the roadmap turns out. We really don't want to tailor the work for the teams. They need to be working on the most high priority item. And also there, we do a planning 1 and 2. Planning 1 with everybody, so the entire group, just to have the interaction with each other and really know what each team is pulling in terms of work, and then they go to their planning 2 to detail out the sprint. Um, you see a Miro board here at the back. We actually do it on site, but the Miro board is just there for because it gets filled up during the day, and then everybody uses it also throughout the sprint. But we heavily rely on routines. You can see at the top there. Our planning one also always starts with some of the what typically are the things that a lot of product owners tell me that they do not get picked up because there's never any time for it. So at some point, what we decided was, okay, we have, for example, dependency upgrades, we have a static code analysis tool that we run where security vulnerabilities come out. Uh, they get discussed first, and we will always pull in some work there at the beginning of the sprint. We have an architecture community. They work on certain things, working away technical debt. Usually that's also combined with some of the things on the roadmap as well. And we have bugs that come in. But they always get discussed first, the teams pull them in, and only then do we move to the roadmap work. I've never once had the team come to me and say we're already full, but even if that would be the case, I think it's important to first discuss those things. Um, if it would happen 2 or 3 sprints that we're full with bugs and security, then you also know as a product owner, oh, there's a problem. We need to tackle something. The roadmap, it might not be the most important thing to focus on. And then, of course, we move on to the roadmap. And there, for me, we deviate a little bit from a lot of the things that I have seen in Les as well. And Bas also did a talk on at Les conference in his keynote about the product backlog. In our planning one, it's less about pulling in features, but more having a very open discussion about what is the next sprint goal that you are going to work on. But that leans into the roadmap, which I'll be talking about next. So we do pull in work, but we're less going over items there. It's a very open discussion there about where will the focus be for the teams. Okay. Well, of course, if you do planning and you want to do your planning efficiently, and we ran into that fairly quickly, you need to know. Everybody needs to know the work and what's on the backlog. So refinement here is very important for us. Again, this is always on site. We never move to a digital format. I think we tried it once or twice with the planning product. We came back from that because it wasn't really efficient. So this is cross team, and we try to involve stakeholders also as much as possible. And we really saw an evolution there. At the beginning, this was really about, at the very beginning, before we started making the changes, it was about understanding stories very, very well, adding acceptance criteria. That still happens, but now we much more start from working on outcomes. And in the last couple of months, we're also more and more working on things like product discovery. Hey team, a product, we got in a request from a customer or for several customers. This is a signal that we are picking up. Is this something that we can do something with? Can we poke it out and maybe check whether this is something that we can add to the roadmap later? And at the very beginning, when we were doing this, one of the things that we noticed very hard was that there was a lot of domain knowledge lacking with the team. So we do planning of employees. So we have typically what's then called workforce management tool. You need to be aware of how this domain works. You need to know a little bit about the legislation behind it. Timonas is quite a tricky thing. If we don't do it correctly, then our customers will get fines for that, and you don't want to happen that. So even very early on, when we started doing the refinements, we really took a step back and maybe sometimes replaced it just plain out functional training for the team so that they knew while we were still replacing the old module with the new models, like what's the existing function that is there, and so that they knew about what was going on there. And over time, the teams are a lot more skilled now. We do a lot of work on, if we start working on something new, we try to create a very joint understanding of what the problem is. There is a lot of healthy discussion there, and throwing in ideas and then coming towards solutions that we want. And as we were driving that, what I also learned at one point in time is that I needed to start creating more focus for my teams. as a product owner. On the left is the last version of the roadmap that we were making, and I think it makes a very big point because it's with stickies, but it's actually just like swim lanes, and we had like 4 or 5 different objectives that we wanted to achieve, and every quarter we wanted to do something about every objective that we had there. We were doing too many things at once, and the team really didn't know what was important and where the focus was. And the focus was also mainly on features, not on getting things live to customers, not on getting feedback. So that was not healthy. And what I started doing, and this really comes back to all of the queuing theory that Les actually also leans on very heavily, is create a goal-oriented roadmap. We really said like we want to do goals which are only a couple of sprints long, where we try to work towards a certain outcome. Um, and we really want those, we want them to be ordered. That was also very important. The teams need to know in which order, what's the most important thing that we want to pick them up. And we will aim for never doing more goals than the amount of teams. Now, sometimes, maybe if in this example here, goal one is finished, we we might be we released it to everybody. We gave the feedback. We worked on the feedback, and we're done. We're happy with the outcome. Uh, then we might move on to goal two, but we might still be doing some follow up later on. We just don't quit. But the focus of our sprint goals is really on the next goal at that point in time. That really helped us to start picking up on some of these on some of these items. And I think the reason why I put this one here is the reason that we've started working with these goals, and also switching to more an outcome-based system, was to also help us get rid of that of on the left on the right hand side there, all of that stock that we had in the warehouse. We really, and initially, we were not really even thinking in business outcomes. The outcome could even be like this sprint, we want this feature to be released or this module to be released to 80% of the customers that we have. And then now let's figure out which things that we need to do within that module so that we can release it to 80% of the customers. That kind of thinking behind it really pushed us forward. So I think if you switch to a goal-oriented roadmap, oftentimes we really start to think like, oh, we need to create really business-driven outcomes. We want to impact sales for X amount of percent, etc. But sometimes you also don't need to go that far to make a big impact change on your organization. It can be more practical. Together with these goals, I mentioned that we want to do it in combination. And we wanted to do it in combination with them not taking like hundreds of sprints. And we wanted to time box it. We started introducing what we call bets, because we needed to find a new language there. I think the important thing there is that estimates in our case were really associated with frustration and mistrust. We used story points, we used t-shirt sizing, and then we tried to figure out the roadmap, but we were never delivering on the roadmap. It was never going as we wanted. But we still wanted something to control our clock and be able to say to the team or agree with the team on, we think that this is a meaningful investment to do, but it shouldn't take us longer than this amount of time to reach this kind of outcome. And that's really a middle ground there. And so instead of asking the team, how long will it take? I started flipping it around. And this is probably also the point where I could really leverage my technical skills and my developer background. I went to the team and went with these goals and said, for example, this this goal, this outcome, what do you think we can do within 6 sprints? And let's have a discussion about that. That really triggers a different mentality in the refinements that you then start to get, because people start thinking within that constraint. If it really isn't workable to do something well, um, you should expand it or you should rethink it. But it's a way of thinking about it as well as a product owner. Like, this is how much I want to invest into the product, reaching that outcome. If it really goes over that, I think it is too expensive. So that kind of language really helped us also to move along and be much more efficient in this. And these have become really a conversation starter for us. So it helps us think within an outcome what's most important to deliver, which tech debt can be also cleaned up within this amount of time, but also very important during the time that we are working on this. Are we still on track? Do we need to cut scope? Do we need to make some decisions here? And also, as a product owner, maybe it is going very well. You see a lot of potential, and do I need to invest more time? Uh, just an example, it's very heavy on our own domain, of course, but the name of the goal is really not that great. We knew what the outcome was. It's called dynamic statutes and rule-based planning validations. And statutes, in our case, tell something about an employee, about how, like, for example, is it a full-time worker? Is it a part-time worker? Is it a flexible worker? And that later then tells you, like which rules do we need to check when we are planning somebody, when somebody is being planned, where do we need to give errors? Some people in some statutes might only be planned 2 days after each other because otherwise it's not legal, for example. And that was a fixed list that we had. That grew organically. Yeah? We started within Belgium, so we just implemented the ones that are in Belgium. Then we went to the Netherlands, and they really used completely different names. And all customers were saying to us, like, yeah, but that's not logical. We even added some for the Dutch market then, and then the list grew even bigger, and it was not workable anymore. And once we started working on it, the following actually happened. And it started combined very well with incremental delivery for us. The first sprint, the team actually went in and they said, like, wait, what we can do is actually we can make this configurable and allow you to disable and hide old static statutes. And we did that, and we rolled that out to customers. The second sprint, we added an option to add your own statutes. The third sprint, we worked on having some settings that were linked actually to static statutes and actually configuring, allowing them to be configured on dynamic statutes. I see a question there on the size of the sprint. We do 2 weeks here. And then later on, we rolled further. Sprint 5, we were actually moving on to the planning validation. And what the team then came up with was, like, we can use the old validation, build the new one next to it with a beta tag that shows up. And I already had some feature requests for new validation rules. We started implementing them first. So both of them were live at the same time. Customers were seeing new features, and then we started to actually replace the old ones. That's when customers were seeing less benefit of it because the functionality did change. And then even at the end, we finished the 10 sprints. I actually invested in like 2 sprints more even to add 2 additional features on top of this that previously we had estimated were very complex to do. So that was a very big gain there. I see the question about the amount of teams. So this is with 2 teams, so we're not that big. And yeah, but we're talking about 11, 12 developers. And there's a second line support team as well. They do technical support on the site, and that's 3 people. These are then some of the updates that we show during the sprint reviews. We really talk about it's being how it is being used, but also feedback that we are getting. We might not roll out a feature immediately to everybody because we want to see do a little bit of canary testing, or sometimes there's a little bit of risk more involved with some things, and then we do it in waves, and we really communicate about that. Um, I did an exercise last week even to look at that, uh, how well we are doing. Um, I excluded the two first goals because they were not that great. We went double over our bet, but they were also not the best defined yet. And we spent that time working on refining the other ones much better. We're at the moment 95% accurate with our teams. So if we say like we're going to do something in 6 sprints. It might take us 7 sprints, but we're pretty sure that we stay within that time window. And we also don't plan our full year. And we have two teams, 2 week sprints. So we have 52 sprints in a year. We actually only put on our roadmap for 40 sprints. We use about 44 for roadmap work, and that leaves us a little bit room for other stuff, bugs that come up, but also smaller feature requests that we think are interesting, working away technical debt, and also holidays from the team. Some periods are just not that productive, and the coming holiday periods. And so we're at about 86% efficiency. Even then, within a sprint, the team also doesn't plan 100% on the sprint goals even, so it's even lower there. But for us, this is perfectly fine because we see learning as the main thing that we focus on. Um, the accuracy on the roadmap is also not the goal, but it's a nice benefit because our stakeholders do like it. They know when a feature will be finished, more or less. Okay, diving into a little bit more detail on how we get to that roadmap. Not going too deep in that, but we also work very closely with our sales and operations team here. Again, we're not that super big, so there's about as many people on the other side with business team than the development team. And usually, we do workshops 3 times a year to update our roadmap, where we also work on product strategy, product vision with everybody. And that's people in first line support, sales, consulting, developers, uh, product people as well, of course. So everybody is there. Well, not everybody, but every team, every role does send representatives. We do it with about 25 people, 26 people were there last time. And we really spent an entire day working on what's our vision, what's our strategy, what's important, and then looking at the kind of things that we can do and trying to figure out together a roadmap. It's never the final roadmap. That's still up to the PO to make the final decisions, but we get very valuable input there. And it also, I think the best feedback that I always get there is that people call that the best team building that we do. But we're actually really talking about product vision and strategy, business goals that we want to achieve, markets, etc. So it's quite heavy topics that we do, but everybody is really engaged there, and that also makes that the roadmap that we end up in, that everybody is very aware of what is in there within the organization. Okay, I said learning is very important every day, 1 day a month. So every month, 1 day, we spend with the entire team, and that's developers, products, working on increasing our skills. That can be technical, and we can maybe do a kata, or we do photo on the bottom left is we do an org topologies training because we want everybody to really be aware, like what's our org design, what's the reasoning behind the way that we are working. But it can also be somebody from, for example, from SD Works, one of uh, the parent company above ProTime, which is in payrolling, coming to us and explaining us a little bit about the payrolling process, and the finer aspects there. So our teams are really also knowledgeable about that. We have some fixed sessions in the morning, and in the afternoon we always do an open space where everybody can bring their own topics, and they're always quite full. So it's very fun to see people bring some of their own coding projects that they are working on at home, or maybe, and that's one of the really side effects that we did not that we did not anticipate. We actually wanted we previously had an overall retrospective which was not really working that well, and we had a lot of trouble getting it on point. Actually, people bring overall retrospective topics to the open space, and then it makes it a lower threshold. People wanting to talk about improvements, they join the open space session, and if they'd rather join like a technical session, they go to the technical session, and everybody is happy. Yeah, these are some pictures that we did as well. We did like a mobbing 2 day workshop actually, where at the end we did like we developed one feature in two mobs where we were rotating the front end and the back end. But like I said, the focus here is on spending time on learning and improving our skills. That's very important. And then the final aspect here is customer contacts. I really wanted to add a good picture there, but we never got one. This is one where one of our developers actually joined the marketing team when they did a video with one of our reference customers. What's important is not that he was there sitting making the video, is but that afterwards he really sat down with that person and followed her doing her job and doing the planning, and then coming back with feedback. And we also try to do that like once or twice a year with some of the developers. That's a lot of stuff that we did over the year, and we did it bit by bit. So very unlike a less flip where you do it at once, we had to introduce a lot of those concepts bit by bit. It took us about 2.5 to 3 years to really get to that efficient level. I wanted to end with a couple of things like signs what are stable footing for us, because you want to build scaffolds for your team to get into this more business problem oriented focus for your teams, where they're in a thriving archetype. But how do you know that you can kind of take the scaffolds away and not be that busy with it anymore? And one of the first things that I mentioned that I noticed there is if you start noticing that people and especially stakeholders or customers come to you and say like everything seems to be moving very fast, that's very good. But what you will notice in the beginning, and it's more about perception of speed. Because we were becoming very transparent. The reality was actually we were in the beginning moving very slowly, even slower than before. But stakeholders actually felt like it was moving along very fast, because for them, they never knew what we were doing within a sprint. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. You want to make sure that it's fun again. And for us, we did that. I wanted to Greg from the quote from Greg here, mainly because I have another quote from Bas at the end. Another thing for me, and this is a more nuanced thing to see, is that you notice that you're working with a team of teams instead of separate teams, and the way that you will feel that as a product owner, so I can speak from that, is that you're really often talking to the group and asking the group like, "Hey, I have this problem. How do we fix this problem?" Rather than shopping with your items and going from team to team and trying to find somebody to pick it up. Um, this is very difficult to put in words, but it is something that you will notice if you're in a team of teams dynamic, that starts to happen. And it is something that also helps reduce the cognitive load. We talk a lot about cognitive load for developers, but there's also such a thing as cognitive load for product people. If you're constantly managing your teams and needing to micromanage them, that's also very straining. Within a team of teams context, that starts going away, and you get much more room and space to work with the rest of the organization, with customers, with stakeholders. And then I think the last one, this was actually one that Bas posted right before the LESS conference, or a couple of weeks before, while I was working on my presentation. I liked it a lot, and I was thinking along the same lines. I noticed that we actually talk a lot within our teams, which I think is a very good thing. We have a lot of FaceTime, and so we really after COVID, for example, we never forced people to come back to the office for X amount of days. No, we said we want to do the sprint reviews and the sprint planning at, at the office, and we want to do the refinements at the office. That's very important for us. And then the dev days, we really expect you to show up then, but otherwise it's a team responsibility to see what you are doing. And even then, teams actually show up in the office to work as a group as well. Um, but about that talking, things that I noticed in the last couple of months ago while I was working on the presentation and being a little bit more attentive to it, are two things. You see signs of empiricism in the language. So things like, what's the next step, what we can take, versus asking questions like, when will it be done? Um, Much more about what are things that we can try, and not trying to get push people to finish work really helps. And you notice that in our refinements, like we try to work towards the outcome, and even if it's very vague, we always end up with some things that we can try during a next sprint, and then come back and see whether we learned something and whether we can we get deeper into the problem. Um, and another one, and I'm mentioning it here mainly because I oftentimes see a lot of talk as well and I'm not saying that it is a bad thing, but about ubiquitous language in domain-driven design. There's a lot of focus on those kinds of things, of trying to get to a point where you have a lot of a same language that you can use with stakeholders. We do some aspects of domain-driven design. We never created an ubiquitous language, but what I think is much more important for us is that we actually have a big openness for our developers and stakeholders to really understand each other. So we never formalized a shared language, but we listen to each other and we are very much open to understand our points of view. The technical people try to explain the technical stuff that they are doing, and on the other side, everybody is really attentive to try to understand what the technical thing is that they try to do. And if it doesn't work out, we actually try to find better ways to do that. And that really helps you, especially in those refinements, but also in the reviews, to get feedback, to get on that common ground there. You're talking about the same thing. So that's the end of the presentation. So yeah, I hope you had something or you learned something from it, from the journey that we had.
Mm,
I'm not sure if there are any other questions here. I might have
Michael,
missed some in the chat as well.
thank you very much, Michael. We do have a couple minutes remaining, folks. Not a big group here, so make use of the time if you would like to ask some questions. A few
I
minutes.
see here one from Matt as well. Are you using both the digital Miro board and sticky notes and boards? Yes. I think in the on-site sessions, we really often just fall back to flip charts, sticky notes, and then probably, yeah, then it ends up with somebody taking a picture and making a duplicate of it in Miro. After a while, when it becomes a little bit more fleshed out, we work from Miro, but there's definitely benefits to just sometimes going back to old school, yeah, hands-on tools. Like the roadmap workshops we do, we don't use any screens. Everybody is there, your laptop is closed, and it's all stickies and white digital. Like the sticky whiteboard rolls that you can put on the walls, and the entire room is full of flip charts and stuff like that by the end of the day.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the question and the answer, Michael. Um,
And I see one more. Do you have fixed or dynamic teams? We have the teams are very fixed, but we do try to work with some travelers once in a while. So we are very open and transparent about the roadmap. And sometimes one of the teams will indicate like we are lacking skills in this. So if we would need to work on this topic, we would need some help with that. And then we start working with travelers to bring the knowledge to the teams. And that can be while we're working on it or maybe ahead of time.
Thank you for that. Um, Folks, another question or so. Doug. Uh,
Yeah, the one. Any thoughts on what would happen if you try to scale this to 7+ teams? I think if you would, what we do essentially now ends up with less. So I think there are plenty of reference cases from Les where that scales. I think the way we do our roadmap will probably also scale. You might need to tweak it a little bit, but I've become very um, uh, yeah, I've really fallen in love with the format of us having a really clear outcomes for the teams to focus on rather than just asking them to build a feature. I'm not sure whether I would how much the extra effort would be to start rolling it out gradually to 7+ teams. You might want to try a bigger change, to do like Kaikaku and then Kaizen and then a couple of iterations because I think we were now went really slow. But with two teams, you can do that. With 7 teams, it might become a little bit confusing, I think. So, that, I, yeah.
Well, thank you for this, folks. We're at the hour, so I I would like to thank you, Michael, personally, for this great presentation, for this great opportunity to learn from you. This is a use case. This is a an experience report that goes much further than just a regular pre-cooked presentation. I think these kind of presentations go a much longer way. It doesn't have to be dense on text. It's actual your personal experience that you shared, and hopefully people took some away from it. Thank you very much for doing this. Thank you for coming out of this hour for you. Michael is in Europe. You in Belgium, right? So
Belgium, yes.
yeah, six
It's
six hours
it's
away.
7 o'clock now, so
7 o'clock.
that's
Yeah,
fine.
we have a Eastern Standard. It's 1 p.m. now. So we will have hopefully this recording available in the next few days for you folks. If you can share it with your colleagues, that would be great too. And we'll be getting a deck. Well, whatever you have this deck somehow. If you want to forward it to me, Michael, I'll be happy to include it in the transmission. Okay.
Yep, I will send it to you in a
Thank you very
minute.
much. And I do want to encourage everyone, if you guys have any questions directly for Michael, just reach out to him on LinkedIn. He's very easily searchable and very receptive and responsive. So hopefully I did not misspeak on your behalf, Michael. All good.
All good.
Excellent. All right. Once again, thank you, folks. Have a good night. Have a good day, the rest of the week, and have a great weekend.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye bye.